All right, so our first review of the day is going to be for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Here, this movie is directed by James Mangold. James Mangold, you might know him from directing other works as such as Copland, 310 to Yuma, Logan. Which we praised a lot. Thought it was a great send-off for the character, legacy character of Wolverine, Hugh Jackman. Can he do the same thing for Indiana Jones? Well, we'll let you know here. So, in this, you have old Indiana Jones, a man who's in his 80s, continue to be played by Harrison Ford, and Harrison Ford still looks good. There's a scene where, you know what I mean, he's got his shirt off, and it was like, hey, I mean, this is probably the best that any 80-year-old man could ever look in his entire life. So shout out to Harrison Ford for that. And there is some stuff in here that, I mean, I do think he did some stunts on his own. I mean, because what kind of delayed a lot of this movie was him getting hurt constantly. So that's what kind of raised a lot of the production budget of this movie, because they had to keep stopping filming of it because he did get hurt quite a bit of it. But, so that is also kind of commendable that it is, a guy in this advanced age of his life, still kind of going out there, still doing this stuff, still being Indiana Jones, and the character that Harrison Ford has always really loved and I think really appreciated playing. So in this kind of new adventure here, he kind of gets roped into a new adventure from his goddaughter, who here is played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. People might know Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She was in the hit show Fleabag, which she created. She's also worked with Disney before. She was the voice of the robot in Rogue One. So it's all about finding this dial, and this thing that could change the course of history. And of course, always a traditional villain in Indiana Jones. He has to go up against Nazis. So it's a big search and race of trying to get this dial and trying to get it, and who's going to get it first, and searching for it, because of course Indiana Jones is all about wants to put it in a museum where it belongs, right? And one of the main villains here you see is Mads Mikkelsen, who plays the main villain in this, and Mads Mikkelsen, who does I think a decent job here. I mean, he's got that perfect kind of this is not a offense to him, but he's got that kind of Nazi face. I don't know. There's not a shot at him. Good looking guy, but I just mean, he's got that kind of villainous, snobbish nature with him that I think works perfectly for that. You do have his henchman here, one who's played by Boyd Holbrook. And I think that also kind of works very well, but they're just kind of reduced to kind of henchman roles here, which seems kind of a shame because Boyd Holbrook is a very dynamic and very good actor, but he's kind of just a simple henchman here. So yeah, I mean that kind of makes up those kind of elements of traditional Indiana Jones movie. I don't know how you feel about the entire legacy of Indiana Jones, these movies. I know that people are like, after the last one, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out how many years ago? That was in what, 2008? Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was?
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been so it's been over, it's been quite a while, over a decade since we've seen the last Indiana Jones movie there. And I know that a lot of people that left a real bad sour taste in their mouths with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I always maintain, for me, it's always back and forth between Raiders and The Last Crusade, of which was my favorite one. I'm not too hot on Temple of Doom, but I plan on rewatching all the Indiana Jones movies. This made me want to go back and watch all of them again. But I want to toss it to Dusk, get your opinion on this. What do you think about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny?
Oof. Well, the movie kind of starts with this early set where they kind of deep fake his face to make him look like a younger Indiana Jones. That's what you see mostly in the trailers when they're on the train and he's working with his buddies, who will eventually, who Helena will be eventually his goddaughter. And for the first 20 minutes, I realized something fairly early on. It seemed like a kind of a nice little indie adventure where they're just going across trains, jumping. I mean, technology's really gotten good where they're really good at the face. Although I did notice, I in this movie, I really did notice that Harrison Ford really does act with his body. And so even though they could put someone's face on top of him, it always just seemed a little off with his movements. But that's a more minor feeling as I was watching it. And those first 20 minutes, I'd say, was where I'm like, okay, all right, this is going to be pretty good. This is going to be solid. It's not going to be the best thing, and then we kind of start back in modern where India is now, and I don't know about you, but I just felt depressed watching him. I just felt depressed watching him where he was in life, what they'd kind of made his character into, where he's kind of at. And then Helena shows up in his life and really kind of drags him into this adventure of no want of his own. And he just kind of feels along for the ride for a lot of it. And that's probably one of my biggest frustrations is you can see all the money on the screen.
Hmm.
This movie is $320 million budget. Compared to the first movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, was only $20 million
Hmm.
in comparison to that. And I'm gonna be honest, you can see the money melting on the screen, and a lot of it, while there's some good moments here and there, I just don't think it coalesces into a strong story or really an adventure that felt that Indy really needed to be a part of. And I wasn't a big fan of a lot of the choices that they made for both his character and other characters in the legacy of Indiana Jones. Regardless how you feel about the Crystal Skull, I don't know how you feel about it.
Well, from what I remember about Crystal Skull, I didn't really
Hmm.
like it all that much. I think a lot of it was, yeah. As Javon Good says in the chat here, he says Crystal Skull and the Swinging Monkeys.
Yeah, I'm
You
not saying
know,
it's a good movie,
there's some good moments in it. I
right?
think there's some good moments. Like Kate Blanchett as the villain, I think is
Hmm.
good. I think she's fun. I think of course Harrison Ford as the character Indiana Jones is good. And like I said, this is a
Right.
different Indiana Jones than probably what we've seen
Sure.
previously. Because this takes place in 1969. And he's just kind of a doddering kind of guy now. You see the beginning of the movie, he's retired. He retires there from his teaching job, his professor job. He's teaching a group of students. It's totally a different contrast to when you see
Yeah.
something like in Raiders, where the students there are just enamored with him. Getting up there teaching, but you just have these kind of disinfected kind of youth kind of just listening to him talk about this.
Hmm.
So it's a different contrast. He's a crotchety old man. He's coming to somebody's apartment, banging on the door with a bat and everything like that. So yeah, I mean it's probably way different than we've seen, but I mean that's what you kind of can expect from a guy that
Hmm.
is now 80 years old. And it's like all the adventure, all the things that he did. It's like yeah, that's kind of long in the rear view mirror now. You mentioned the beginning of this movie. The movie opens up with about a 20-30 minute
Yeah,
opening
20
sequence.
ish.
Yeah, of a de-age. Do you see de-age and technology that they do there with you see it in the trailer also of like in 1939, I think it is, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And the technology, it's gotten a lot better than what we've
Hmm.
seen previously, and it's continuously gotten better. And you've seen a lot of, especially Disney has done a lot of it, like in things like with their Marvel movies, what they did. It's funny that we're going to talk about Secret Invasion because they also do the de-aging stuff with Nick Fury there
Yeah,
too,
they do.
like with when he was in Captain Marvel and in the Secret Invasion show, and they did it also in the Guardians movie, like with Kurt Russell. So they've done it, all the de-aging stuff, and they did it also in Star Wars with who they do it with. Was it Luke they did it with? Yeah, Luke
Yeah.
Skywalker. Yeah, they did it with that. So you see kind of the technology, and it's gotten way better as times. I will still say that it's a little off. You
Hmm.
still can
Yeah.
see that it's obviously not a real person's
Right.
face,
Yeah.
especially like when they put the light on it, or
Yeah.
like when he's moving around. Sometimes it's like when he's moving around, it's like his face is in another room and his body's in a
Yeah.
separate room. Like sometimes it looks a little wonky. Sometimes, like
Yeah.
especially when he's moving around. But
That's what I'm
when they
saying
do,
with the body language. It doesn't quite fit with his body and also with like the way the eyes. Sometimes the eyes kind of feel almost a little soulless.
yeah.
They haven't still quite figured that out yet.
Yeah. So yeah. So it still looks a little off. It does look great though. It looks fantastic. And I don't know if they're trying to prep things. It's like, well, I don't know if somehow, what I mean, Harrison Ford, like maybe we just do it all CGI where we can put somebody's,
Oh
put his
god.
face on somebody's body and then we can just do it. And I don't know if
Just
they're
leave him
prepping
alone.
people, prepping for people for that. But I thought, yeah, the movie opened up fantastic. I thought it was a great opening to it. And I don't want to be like, well, I don't really want to see an old Indiana Jones, but when you see him kind of now modern day and he kind of gets dragged into this adventure, on one hand, it is kind of inspirational to see that,
Hmm.
but then it's like there are some limitations there of what you can have this character do because of that age. What did you kind of think about that? And did you think in the movie they lingered too much on his age and made too many jokes about his age?
Hmm.
Because it is a lot of old jokes that kind of get thrown around,
Yeah, they
especially
do.
from Helena from Phoebe Waller-Bridge. There's also like another sidekick character here who is a character named Teddy.
Yeah,
Here they meet in Tangier,
yeah.
who they meet.
The
So
new
give me
short
your
round.
give me your opinion on those characters, and give me your opinion on kind of the age of Indy in this movie.
Uh, yeah. If the first 20 minutes had been the entire movie, I think I would have been all right, pretty all right with it. Would have been like, okay, this is a solid Indiana Jones adventure. This is pretty all right. But the minute Phoebe Waller-Bridge kind of walks into his life, I'm sorry, she just did not have chemistry with Indy. And the constant jokes of him being older, the constant jokes of him, oh my knee, oh this, oh I can't do this the way it used to. I'm like, yeah, we get it. I totally get it. That's not where I watch an Indiana Jones movie for. And there were so many other ways you could have written this movie while him still being old and having to work with other people. Just like the way that it worked with him in The Last Crusade with Sean Connery with
Yeah.
his father. Yeah, Sean Connery is an older gentleman at that point, but they still found ways for him to kind of be there, even though he's a side character. There's still ways. I mean, this movie felt more of they trying to prop up Helena's character, and I'm just gonna be honest. That it's just Helena character just didn't work for me. She didn't really. She tried. They tried to go with this kind of like roguish kind of character, and she even keeps saying like, "Oh, well, I do this for this." It's like, nah, you're just a piece of crap. You selling stuff. You're selling stuff for money. At least at the end of the day, Indiana Jones, while he did sell things for money, he at least did make the attempt to get things in a museum. He did the right thing in the end. He saved a village, or he did things in these different adventures. With Elena, it's like, no, I'm just a mercenary piece of crap, and I just want this to cover my debts, and I just basically do whatever I want whenever I want. And now I'm dragging this doddering old man around with me, barking at him, telling him that he's not good enough anymore, and constantly making fun of him. So yeah, no, I'm sorry. I didn't quite have fun watching that happen.
Hmm. With the Helena character played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I mean, it you know, she mostly has, done comedy. We've known her for the comedy stuff, like I said,
Mhm.
Fleabag. And, seeing her kind of more of in like an action adventure type role. I see what you're kind of saying a little bit about I mean, she is kind of like this roguish, because she's like, hey, listen, I'm stealing these items and I want the money. I mean, that's her main
Yeah.
primary kind of goal here. And it is lying to Indiana Jones at first, and kind of deceiving him a little, and kind of pulling him into this adventure. And so you may go like, well, why should I even root for this character? I like this character. I did kind of like her in the sense that, just I think more just I guess the actress herself, because I think she's got a
Mhm.
lot of personality to her. And I don't know, you say that there's not really a lot of chemistry between her and Harrison Ford. I felt a little bit there. I'd say there's a little bit good back and forth sometimes there between them that kind of works. I do think maybe the old jokes it's a little too much
Mhm.
there at referencing that stuff of him being on. It's like, we get it, he's old. I mean, everybody can see he's old. But I do think they go a little too far there. But I didn't really dislike her character.
Mhm.
Actually, I had a good time with her character.
Yeah.
When you talk about Teddy, who is kind of the other sidekick that you kind of have here, um, I think he's useful. He's got some
Mhm.
good skills, got some good qualities. I mean, of course, the immediate thing when you have another kid character in the Indiana Jones movies to compare him to Short Round from Temple of Doom.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I mean, is his character going to be remembered or as classic as something like Short Round?
No.
I don't really think so. It's just that kid, but I mean, there's some good moments with him that
Mhm.
work really well, and he does kind of some good things there. When you talk about this whole kind of adventure here, it's just kind of what this movie and Indiana Jones movies is like
Mhm.
this adventure, and like I said, two people trying to get a MacGuffin, and then who's going to get it first, and who's going to use it, and what's going to happen. I mean, that's always kind of the big things with these movies. Um, did you kind of like the villains in this? Did you think they made it kind of interesting? Especially when you look back at some of the other villains that we've had. I mean, again, he's going up against Nazis again.
Mhm.
I do kind of, always love Indy when he says Nazis. Like you can just tell this the absolute disdain in his voice. He's
Mhm.
like, "You are a Nazi," you know what I mean? Like you
Mhm.
just like you can just tell the absolute disdain, absolute anger he has kind of in his voice for that. What do you kind of think about Mads Mikkelsen here, as one of the villains here?
Mads Mikkelsen does. He is a great actor in every single thing he's ever done. He doesn't give a bad performance. So even as this character as a von Ruler, he's still interesting. He still is able to kind of get a little more meat on a character that I'm going to be honest isn't really written too better than any of the other contemporary villains Indiana Jones has had. His goals kind of don't make too much sense, especially when you understand the concept of what the movie ends up being. I'll also say this for another measure. I thought the side characters are fine. I thought the actor who plays Teddy is fine, but again, he's just a short round replacement without having to go into it. Sala, it was nice to see John Rhys Davis for like half a second. That was appreciative, but then it's like, oh god, you're old too. And then it's just yeah, man, it's just at a certain point there's so many other ways they could have gone about this plot. And when you finally realize what this whole thing is about and what the Dial of Destiny can actually do, not what people think it can do, what it can actually do, you go, so what was the point of all this? Like
Hmm.
what was this actually setting up? You think of this. This is the end story for Indiana Jones. This is the wrap up of his entire story. Everything from Raiders to this. This is it. We're sticking the landing with this. We're not going to ride off in the sunset like we did with The Last Crusade, which is the actual ending for Indiana Jones. We're not going to do that. We're going to add this movie on top of the other unnecessary sequel that came out in 2008. And I'm sorry, this felt like that felt like a big budgeted waste of my time.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, that's the thing. When talk about James Mangold, talked about Logan, and we talked about how I
Yeah.
said how much of that was a good send off for the character. I don't know
Mhm.
if he had more freedom to do that with the Wolverine character than he
I
has more
guarantee
freedom
he
to do with
did.
the Indiana Jones. You know what I mean? So that's probably is a
Yeah.
thing. It's like
I
he probably
guarantee
wanted to do
he probably
more.
did. I guarantee he probably did. He and also and Hugh Jackman had a lot more control over what they kind of wanted to do at the end. The way he handled Patrick Stewart's character. Uh, Yeah, that's completely different, and I'm a big fan of Mantle. I actually like Return to Yuma. I think it's an underrated western. I think it's not really as appreciated as it should be. I like a lot of his
Yeah,
movies, and in the right circumstance, I actually think Mango could have actually made a fantastic Indiana Jones movie. But this ain't it, Chief.
yeah. And hearing early word about the movie because it was in the Cannes
French
Film
stuff.
Fest.
Yeah.
Yeah, film festival, and it got kind of a negative reaction there, which I don't know. I don't really pay attention to that kind of stuff anyway, because I'm like,
hmm
they also gave a standing ovation of things like The Whale and I think
hmm
Blonde too, which I didn't like
Yeah.
either of those movies. So I don't really pay attention to too much of that stuff. Um, and it is as a movie, is it a great final send off to any? Is this what you want? Probably not.
hmm
Are there some sweet moments here, especially with some returning characters, like you mentioned, John Rhys Davies, who comes back, who was also in Raiders. He has great moments here that I think
hmm
work really well, that are really good. There's another character that returns in here that also there's a sweet moment here. I think that it ends on a really sweet note. There's
hmm
some good kind of character beats here with Indiana Jones playing the character Harrison Ford, like when he's talking to Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character Helena, where he's on the boat there and he's talking to him about what's kind of happened in between some of these movies, that I think kind of works kind of well. It is a lot of kind of repetitive of chase, 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 and action, and this kind of things. And there's some good, I think, well filmed action stuff in here. When they're in
hmm
the city, and when he's on the tuk tuk and he's chasing the car and everything like that. I mean, it's shot very well and shot very nice. So there's some good action scenes here, but it just feels like, okay, it's a basic indie adventure. It's
hmm
nothing that I don't think that stands out in particular, of like, wow, you know what I mean? Something like Raiders or something like Last Crusade, even
Even
Temple
Temple
of
of Doom.
Doom. Yeah, even something like that had very, I think, as much as I'm kind of conflicted about that movie, had some iconic moments and had some
It has some
memorable
of the most
moments.
memorable quoted moments in the entire franchise.
Yeah. So I don't think. I mean, it's hard to say what scene from this will be talked about afterwards. There are some. And also it's good to see like John Williams, who comes back, who's scoring this movie again, who's scoring Indiana Jones again. When those beats hit, those beats hit. But yeah, I mean, I think after the first act, when you see that opening sequence, I don't think anything reaches the height of that opening sequence up there. And it's maybe because maybe we're dealing with seeing a younger Indiana Jones, and maybe that's what people just want to see. They want to see a younger Indiana Jones, and you're kind of limited when you have now a much older one.
Mhm.
And like
Could
I
have,
said, I mean,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, absolutely. Indiana Jones is Adventure Man. He is based on the pulp heroes of the 1930s. He's based on a concept made by Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and John Williams composing the music. He is a creation of Ultimate Action Man. He's still a professor. If they wanted him to be still important in this movie, he could have been a more professorial role, even as an older kid, or just like Indy's father was, but still have action here and there. He just has to be more subtle. He has to be more careful. He's had 50 plus years. He can do occasional movements, jumps, using the whip, using the gun more often because he can't do the physicality he used to in his youth. He's gotten smarter over time. There's many ways they could have played this, and instead they played it for mostly spectacle that ultimately doesn't really land it the way you want it to.
Mm, yeah. That's a good point. You could have done something like that, but then I think if you did something like that, like if you tried to make him kind of a role like with Sean Connery and Last Crusade, I think people would have complained like, "Oh, Indy's taking a back seat in his own movie," and I mean, that's not what we come for an Indiana Jones movie for.
Sure, but at least he would have been in his role. And I'm not necessarily saying he should be immediately back seat, but he does have more focus on him being an archaeologist, being a professor, having action there for the younger characters, and he still participates and still shows them how it's done in a manner that's smarter, not harder. Like, well,
Mm,
maybe Mutt Williams is in it, and he's fighting and doing other things along with Short Round. And they're as trying to help Indy out, and he just I don't know, shoots a guy from a long distance in a sniper rifle and takes the guy out. And he's like, we don't have time for this. And just still a badass. He's just being smarter in every decision he makes. Like we don't have time.
mm, yeah, fair point. So yeah, from what I remember, I haven't seen Crystal Skull in a
Mhm.
long time,
Yeah.
in a while. I do think it is better than that. Like I said, I don't think it's
Mm,
a great send off if you're looking for that. I don't think
yeah.
it's that. But it's just a decent indie adventure. If you want to see another one, and maybe like, hey, I've always loved this character, always was a fan of them, and I just want to see another adventure. Maybe it'll serve just that purpose. I wouldn't mind seeing it again, in theaters and
Mhm.
everything like that. I wouldn't really have an issue doing that. But yeah. So that was kind of my thoughts on it. So I'm gonna give it I'd say a lowish tune in, maybe to like a high stream it or stream
Mhm.
it kind of territory for me. So I get kind of a lowish tune in. What about for you, there, Dusk?
Oof. I'm a big Indiana Jones fan. I really like this stuff. I even like it. I even like to a certain extent the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles to a certain extent. Uh, I actually think this is worse than Crystal Skull. At least with Crystal
Mm,
Skull, they had better. Say what you want about Shia LaBeouf. He and Harrison Ford actually had great chemistry in that movie when they actually sat down for a couple seconds. That diner scene is still one of my favorite moments in that movie, where they're just Steven Spielberg has always been good at being a like eyes on view kind of director of getting down and dirty with his characters and really kind of working with them. And that was a great moment with those characters. I never kind of felt like, even with the amount of talking in it, that we really got to truly know these characters aside from Indy, who we kind of already know. And this version, Indy just it isn't the Indy that that I kind of really wanted to see, even if that's the one they wanted to go with. With all that considered and the spectacle out there, I'm gonna give it a low stream it. It's the lowest I can possibly give it, bordering on a skip. But if you want to check it out in theaters, you can. But honestly, this is safe for like being at your home theater if you want to watch it. And if you don't actually want to watch this movie because you don't want to taint the image of Indiana Jones, I completely understand. you're not going to completely miss it. Especially with all the rumors about what happened to this movie and all the many cuts and many endings and many things that went going on. You can really see that in this movie, that this movie is barely stitched together as is. It's just one set piece after one set piece after one set piece, and it never really has a moment to breathe.
Mm. Huh. Yeah. So that was Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.